Okay, thank you everybody for joining. I'm here with my sports science team. As you can see, we're quite socially distanced. We're all locked down at the TSG Academy in Zion Hills. We're staying as safe as we can. I hope you are too. Um, Golf, wonderful sport, but can cause a lot of mental anguish as well as physical anguish. And we're here to talk about the latter today, how golf can cause injuries if you're not careful, could be technical, could be issues with your fitness levels or how you're working out. Before I go forward, I'd just like to introduce the team to you. On my left is Sudarshan. He's the head of sports science. He directs our entire sports science team here. Sudarshan has been in the industry for over 25 years, has worked extensively with athletes in all disciplines, has spent a lot of time working for the BCCI and the NCA. And I think we're very happy to have him at our academy. He's definitely a great motivator and a great fitness coach. To his left, we have a strength and conditioning coach, Mrinalini. Um, she's been with us for a couple of years and very dedicated individual. And see if you spotlight the other room for us right now. On the left, there's Pankuri, who's on the physiotherapy side, as well as Achal. Achal is also one of our physiotherapists. They're both done their masters in sports physiotherapy. Very glad to have them with us. They're in a different room for safety purposes. As you know, it's the COVID time, so they're in our school building. What you see behind you, them is their library. Okay, so yeah, coming back to me. Thank you. The golf swing, very complex movements, and I think as a coach and having worked with many players over the last 20 years, I've understood a lot about the physical element of golf as well, the different movements your body has to make, and I've gone through a lot of injuries with a lot of my players. And without this team behind me, I don't think many of my players would have had long, successful careers or will have long, successful careers. So we're going to talk about a few things today, and we're actually going to demonstrate some exercises for you as well. We want you to know how to warm up properly, what is an injury maybe, and how you can manage injuries as well. Sue, in his time, has seen many of these players come through. And if you look at the golf swing, there are many complex movements. But before we go there, I'd like Sue to just maybe give you guys a talk on fitness and what it's all about. Sue?
Hi. So, like any other sports, golf physical demands are much higher, which most of the people are not aware of it. But when you look at the whole game, you normally play this game for about 4 days if you're a golf player, and on every single day you'll be you'll be walking around 3 to 5 kilometers, and you'll be doing high intensive swings of about 70 to 100. Okay, so it needs a lot of physical demand, but most of the people are not physically competent enough to do that much of work. So when you are not physically competent enough, the first thing you always get is you get a physical fatigue, which can later lead into various injuries. So when you look at the physical components or physical demands of sports, basically you need to have a good work capacity. Work capacity which means you must have good muscular endurance, you must have a certain amount of cardiovascular endurance. You don't need to have a cardiovascular endurance like a marathon runner, but since you are playing it for 3 to 4 hours continuously under scorching sun for 4 continuous days, you need to have a certain level of cardiovascular endurance, which will help you to last longer with more efficiency, plus which will help you to recover for the subsequent day. So that's why this cardiovascular endurance has got some priority in golf. Then you need to have muscular endurance because you are doing repetitive high intensity swings in a high intensity activity without much recovery. So you can say you're doing about 70 to 100 high intensity effort, which is done over a period of 3 to 5 hours. So muscle needs to be able to recover faster to repeat the activity with the same efficiency till the last round. Then the strength components, power and strength. Strength is a base which help you to develop your power. Power which help you to give more distance. Okay, so distance is one of the important components for golf. So you need your strength as well as power to be developed. Then you need to have good flexibility because a lot of injury because golf involves a lot of complex movements, which needs good range of movement around your body, around your joints. So you need a good degree of flexibility to execute the skill with more efficiency. And then we have got balance and coordination. All right. So my team is going to talk about what are the causes of various golf injuries. Okay, and how we can manage these golf injuries with the minimum, the minimum guidelines we follow. We can reduce the frequency of injuries. We can reduce the reoccurrence of the injuries, and we'll be able to last longer on the course. So I asked my physio team to look into it. Thank you.
Thanks, Sood. We'll come back to Sood for some good warm-up exercises. Just to talk about, as a golfer, I think you should know how much stress your body is going through. But there's a lot of different movements that your various parts of your body are making. And if you look at your spine goes into flexion, extension, your spine tilts sidewards, there's rotation, a lot of movements there with the spine. You could look at your shoulder, is going into external and internal rotation. You have your wrists going into radial, ulnar. You have your arms abducting, adducting. You have your pelvis, which is again extending and flexing. You have your ankle joints moving in various directions. So there's so much going on in a golf swing that you need to train really well for that. You need to be prepared before your rounds. And for a lot of the club golfers, I think one of the key things we always see in club golf is that a lot of them are working people, so they come to the golf course at 6 in the morning and they tee off at 6:30 without much of a warm-up, and that actually leads to a whole lot of issues. And right from being able to perform better, I have a lot of players coming to me and saying, I'd like to reduce my handicap, I want to improve my chipping, I want to improve my long game. But before we even go there, if you're stepping onto the first tee box when your body is not fully ready to make that move, even the technique that you've worked on for so many years doesn't really work the way it should, because the range of motion is limited because you haven't done any kind of a warm-up. So at some point through then, Mrinalini will take you through a very simple warm-up exercise as well. And now we come to injury. I think very, very important for you guys to understand injury a little better, what can cause it, what are the various things you can do actually to maybe prevent the onset of an injury? How would you recognize as a golfer that you actually have an injury? We all get aches and pains. These are really, really important things that we need to know. So, Sia, over to the physiotherapy team who will just take you through and talk you through a little bit on injuries, causes, maybe management of it. So can we go over to Pankhuri?
Yeah, sure, sir.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Tarun sir, for the beautiful explanation of all the movements. Sia, just one thing I would like to tell you is that if my voice is not very clear, please feel free to interrupt me and just let me know, right? All right. When it comes to injuries, specifically now that we are talking about golf, I have realized that there's not really a mechanism of injury always when an athlete comes to us, right? Injury can occur over a cumulative trauma. By cumulative trauma, I mean sometimes there are factors that cause injuries which have been there in your body since a while now. And I'm going to just ask my friend over here, Achal. She's going to tell you guys how these injuries occur. So Achal, can we just emphasize a little bit on how these injuries are occurring and how the athletes can avoid them by themselves, some injuries, please? Thank you.
So,
as we know, the golf is a more of a coordinated, multi-segmented and a rotational movement happening game, right? So more of the stresses, so we'll talk about the common injuries. More of the stresses is put on your neck, shoulder, elbow, wrist, hand, low back, the most important part, and hip and the knee. So these are the common injuries and the more prone for the golfers, right? So one of the research done on the European tour, and the author suggests that these are the main areas where golfers are more prone. So because these are put on more stresses while doing the whole body movement while swinging. Okay, so we'll get a look into the factors which are responsible and can be prevented by athletes. So one is an intrinsic factors. Intrinsic means internal factors which are within athlete's body and that can be controlled, right, or prevented. So we'll go through it. First is the muscle imbalance. So there can be a structural, segmental, or an upper or lower body muscle imbalance. So we need a high velocity swing to happen, right? So when hip muscle or the glutes muscle, we also call it buttocks muscle, so when they are weak, so it is overcompensated back and the core muscles, and hence the more chances of your back, low back injury and low back pain happen. So this is one we can rectify with some exercises. Second one comes the poor biomechanics. So it's a technical term. Biomechanics means dealing with the motion of a human body, right? The forces that, how the forces produces the movement. So for an example, if a golfer is lacking from the thoracic spine while swinging, so it is compensated by your shoulder and the hip to produce the high velocity and complete your swing. So these structures are overstressed for compensating the thoracic mobility. So again, the player is prone to injury for these areas. And what the proper biomechanics does, it provides an efficient movement. Okay. So then comes a role of hydration and nutrition. So what proper hydration and nutrition does to the body? It supplies essential nutrients. It maintains our mental stability, which is also an important part of a golf. To be stable, calm, mentally alert for the swing or for the next shot, right? Nutrients for keeping you till the 18th hole or the whole game, right? So every time we advise to keep the energy drinks with you or any seasonal fruits or any of the things you which can give you energy while playing and after for the recovery. Then comes the inadequate sleep. So it is a vital component which is almost neglected by all the athletes, not only the golfers but in other sports also. So our body needs uh, like 8 to 9 hours of sleep to repair or heal from the previous strenuous exercise or physical activity or the tournament thing to get back to it's again back to functional range, right? So we need an adequate sleep. So our body will be on the back position as we were before tournament. So Pankuri, these were all the intrinsic factors and that can be controlled by the athletes. So we can keep all these factors in mind so that prevention, so we can minimize the injury rate.
And Sajal, while we are at these intrinsic factors of injuries, why don't we also look at some of the factors that are not in the athlete's control? Can you shed some light on that, please?
Yeah.
So, as we talked about the internal factors which are within the control of athlete's body, right? Those are the physical aspect, and these are extrinsic or external, which are not in control of athlete's body. Those are external or outside the body. So, first comes the improper technique, which is the most important factor or the main factor for an injury in an amateur players, right? Professional players are more prone to injuries after because of the repetitive or recurrence of the movement happening. So because of improper technique, what happens? The unaccustomed the load is produced or impacted on the other structures which are not used to it, and these again leads to injury. So I would like
to ask Tarun sir to highlight on this improper technique leading to injury.
Thanks, Archie. So one of the main things that the golfer has been searching for or keeps searching for is distance. Now, everybody talks about distance through resistance. I'm sure many of you would have heard of it, where you're actually trying to turn your upper body in the backswing, the thoracic spine, while trying to resist the movement of the lower body. So it creates a so-called a spring action, right? Also known as the X factor. It's come in many Golf Digest magazines, or the X factor stretch. That is, to me, the number one cause right now of a lot of these back injuries, because everyone's searching for distance but the wrong way. Now, why is this? And you need to understand technically why this happens. Now, in a backswing, what does your spine do? Right? Your spine extends, turns, and tilts. Right? So my spine has to extend, it has to turn, has to tilt to get into a good position on top of the backswing. Now, what people have been told a lot, and people actually practice, is maintaining the flex of the trail knee, so that reduces the amount of hip turn, and your upper body and then stretch or turn against the lower. Now, if I tell you to keep your knees bent and extend your spine, you can't do it. So if I'm going to try to extend my spine against my knee, that is where I'm putting a lot of pressure on my lumbar, my lower lumbar spine. So if I need to go into extension, watch what my knee has to do, right? My knee also has to extend. So in the backswing, I have to feel my knee, my trail knee extending. If you are going to see, and if you look at a lot of players today, Jason Day has been injured over and over again because of this. Michelle Wie has been injured over and over again because she tried the resistance model. So Tiger Woods, very, very good example. But the funny thing is, if you look at Tiger Woods' swing today, right, you're going to see the Tiger is now extending his swing.
Sir, sorry to interrupt you for a small time. I think when you're walking away from the camera, your voice is getting unclear. So if you can just stay closer to the camera and explain, that will be better, I guess.
Right. So I'll do my best. So as I was saying, a lot of people who resist the upper and lower body, right, and they try to create more distance like that, that to me is one of the major technical flaws that's causing a lot of back injuries. And as I was saying, Tiger Woods, Michelle Wie, Jason Day, to a large extent, a few other golfers, I can't recall their names right now, have gone through this because they've worked, Ricky Fowler is a good example, is they've worked the resistance model, right? So your trail knee and your hips have to extend, right? Your hips have to turn along with your shoulders. Now, the hips may not turn as much. So one of the things that you really want to do also is keep your feet flared open, right? If you keep your feet flared open in the setup, in the stance, that allows a lot of freedom for your hips to turn and extend, and your knees to extend as well. So my suggestion is, for those of you who are always searching for the distance, try to use range of motion rather than resistance to actually create that distance, because there are many more factors which are your very various different power accumulators in the golf swing that can produce that speed and power, not necessarily taxing your body day in, day out using this resistance model. So that is one of the main causes that I see with better players, with amateur golfers, national amateur golfers, and professionals, where it's causing a lot of issues with the back. Pankuri, over to you. That's one of the main issues that I see. So take it forward.
Thank you, Tarun sir. So we'll head to next factor, that is environmental conditions. So this is something which we can't control, right? So playing in any extreme condition can have negative effect on our performance, right? So if we play in a heat or extreme hot conditions, what happens? Our body dehydrates, exhaustion happens. and to cope up body balances. So that can have a negative effect on performance. So that's why advisable to always hydrate your body, right? And one thing can be done, or you can condition yourself before the tournament to play in those extreme conditions. And the second extreme comes the cold environment, right? So what happens in cold environment, the internal organs or the internal temperature. So body struggles to maintain the temperature with outside. So though that again changes the physiology of the body, and again the body struggles to maintain the temperature. So these extremes, for these extremes, we can condition ourselves, and with the proper hydration and nutrition, we can overcome this. Second comes the improper equipment. So equipment also involves clothing, footwear, and your gloves. So clothing can be added in the environmental conditions. According to environmental conditions, we can do our clothing stuff, right? For the footwear, it's always advisable to wear the golfing shoes and not the other shoes, because of the surfaces you are walking uphill, downhill, that can get an uneven distribution on the foot. So that can again lead to injuries or ankle instability. Then comes our club. So because most of the golfers starts in a very young age, so they are in a growing phase, right? So that's why we need club fitting after every certain period of time because of the growth of the athlete. Then comes that indirect trauma. Indirect trauma is something like can be prevented if we are alert and careful on the course. That can be a direct ball strike to you, or a club hitting to you, or you get slip or surface. These are something we can take care of and prevent injuries. Yeah, over to you, Pankudi.
Thanks, Arjun. That was a great explanation. While we talk about prevention of injuries, now let me tell you first and foremost that is not every pain is an injury, right? I want you all to, like, if this is becoming a very lecture kind of a situation, I want you all to visualize a scenario which all of the golfers or even sedentary people have gone through some or the other time in their life. That is something that you're walking on the course, you're playing 18 holes, or you're practicing very even, and you experience sudden pain in your calves, some discomfort in your calf muscles after walking a few holes. Now, why did that happen? And secondly, you still try to push yourself, you still try to go ahead, make that shot, you are struggling. The next shot that you take after that, you might realize that you're not giving your 100%. Now, why did that happen? Somewhere in your body, you have caused, there is some discomfort that is happening. That discomfort is from your calf muscles, which have been tired because of all the walks, which can be because of maybe all the factors that she just mentioned. Those were your hydration, nutrition, poor warm-up, inadequate sleep, stuff like that. And let's go a few months back. They might not be strengthened enough, might not be conditioned enough, might not be made flexible enough, or the ankle mobility might have been compromised. So that these are all the things that have led to that situation and led to you not making that shot correctly, right? So that thing, what happened there is the calf muscles sent some signals to your brain saying that, there's a discomfort in my body, and that discomfort is now disturbing you taking the shot, right? What you could have done, you could have rectified all these things in the past, which will leave you to play your game optimally on the D day, right? Now, what I'm going to do over here is, before entering preventive measures, I'm going to explain to you something that that is basically my area of expertise as a physiotherapist, is prehabilitation. The name suggests as preventive rehabilitation and rehabilitation. So we are going to discuss some exercises over here, assuming that you all know what foam rolling is and what stretching is. Our strength and conditioning team is going to take over after this thing for the stretches and warm up, cool down, what all to do, how much to do. And we are going to focus on certain activations that you all can do back at your home right now in this lockdown situation with the minimum equipment that we can show off. All right, let's do some activations here, Achal. We are going to demonstrate 2 exercises for every major area that I want everyone to focus on, right? Now, let's start with shoulder exercises. Right now, your shoulder is one of the joints which require a lot of mobility in it, at the same time being stable, which is more required also in your external and internal rotation, right? This seems like very technical terms, so let's just divide them into open gate exercise and closed gate exercise, right? External rotation, internal rotation. So what you just need a TheraBand over here, whichever TheraBand you have at home, which you can use for your exercise. Don't try and go jump onto the heaviest band. Use a lighter one for starters. You can hold the band in the other hand to exercise one arm. Now, Achal, can we just exercise one side, the right side, and pull it out, right? Now, I want you all to see, can you just turn around, Achal? That the arm has to be really stable, tucked to your body. What you do to ensure this thing is put a small pillow or a towel roll and do your movement of rotating the arm outwards, your forearm. Yes. Research has shown that once you put a towel roll or a stabilizing surface over here and then you do it, the recruitment of your muscles is really better, right? So if you do that, right. Second thing I want you all to make sure is the shoulder joint has to be tucked a little bit behind into the socket where it was actually meant to be. Now, with all our lifestyle changes and whatever hazards we do with our body, we have grouped it down in front. And what we can do in the exercise, we can optimally just take it slightly behind and then perform the exercise. Great. Now, let's do the internal rotation or a closed gate exercise, please. I'm going to hold it for her. Thank you. Okay. Now you're going to rotate the arm inwards. That's your inward rotation, internal rotation of the shoulder. Again, the criteria remains the same. Arm will be and the shoulder will be slightly tucked behind.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much. Next exercise that is very important for any sport, but this time we are focusing on golf, is your swords. We are going to get swords because this exercise is an ornament of your shoulder. What you do basically is wrap the TheraBand to your hand, measure the distance to your shoulder, tip of the shoulder, and then place it on the opposite side of the foot. Perfect, to stabilize it, right? Now, start your movement on the opposite hip. Open the arm out. Yes, from your eye level. And follow the hand movement so that you are actually taking it from in front of your eye level. That's your second exercise that you can do for your shoulder. Very good. Thank you so much. Next thing that we are going to focus on is some quadruped exercise, some exercise on all fours, right? Bird dog exercise to maintain our spine neutral, which is very important. Like Tarun sir has mentioned, how it is important to maintain your low back and your hip during the game. So let's come in all fours position, please. Your hands will be just below the shoulder. I hope you all can see this. Your hands will just below the shoulders. Your knees will be just below the hip. Perfect. Now, I want, Achal, can you please raise your right arm up and the left leg, please? Very good. Now, this is the exercise which really challenges your spine to stay stable and not rotate it towards me or towards the other side. You really want to contract your core. When I say contract the core, I mean to pull the navel in and stabilize the spine. Right? Then please go on the other side. It's the opposite movement. There are a lot of progressions to these movements. So these are just basic things that you can practice till that you can actually access a physiotherapist or a strength and conditioning coach. Right? Next thing we are going to look at for core is your dead bug exercise, which is a really good exercise for core activation. This this exercise, you lie down flat on your back. Make sure your pelvis is rotated inwards or towards the floor movement. Your core is really tucked in. I want you to maintain a tabletop position with your knees and arms will be up. Now we are going to do an opposite again of the right arm and the left leg, right? Try to make sure your spine doesn't curve too much during this movement. Go only till your back can remain stable and go on the other side. Now this is an excellent exercise for core. For those who are really bored of crunches and planks and these things, please try and include this exercise as well in your regime. Next exercise that we are going to do is for the hip, for your glutes to really get activated before you start doing maybe your strength session, or you can just include this in your prehab. Can we just have a loop band? Now this is a mini band or a loop band which you can get online, or you can get it on Decathlon or anywhere. She's going to use a medium loop band because that's what she uses in her normal exercise regime as well. We are going to perform side steps. This exercise is called mini band side steps because it uses a mini band, and we are going to step side to side. Right? Actually, can we have the basic one? It's a little high. Yes. Now just try and step outwards. Very good. On the other side, yes. Bend a little bit. We'll have a slight bend on the hip joint. Not really too much right now because we are going to try and show you very basic movements over here. Now really try and recruit the leg, pushing it out, pushing the band out. Don't try to rotate the leg and then take it out. That will not solve our purpose, right? Your feet will be facing front. Your feet will be facing me so that your glutes really get activated. So this is your exercise for the hips. Over to the next exercise. Can we please remove the band? Another exercise for the hip that I can show you, which is really safe to perform, is your clamshells. Can you perform clamshells? You will be in side-lying position. I hope I'm not going too fast, guys. I hope you're understanding. If I am, please interrupt me and let me know. All right. Side-lying position. Core again should be really tight. Okay. Your shoulder, hip, and ankle will be in one line. If at all you feel like you're not able to maintain that, it's always advisable to do this exercise against the wall so that you have your back, your shoulder, your feet touch the wall so that you remain stable. And lift the knee up without moving the ankle or without you moving your feet. Just lift the hip up. You can hold it there if you want a little challenge in the exercise for 3 to 5 seconds and really take it down. Make sure that you don't fall behind while doing this exercise. It will not solve the purpose because the back will take over the action and the glutes will not fire enough, right? That's your next exercise. Now we are going to do just one exercise because balance and stability is something, as mentioned, very important in any sport. But basic you can do to start building up that balance and stability is a basic single leg balance exercise, right? You're doing single leg balance exercise where you stand on one leg, the other leg, hip, knee will be bent 90-90 and your ankle also will be up in 90-degree position. The challenge in this position is that you don't sway on either side of the spine or front or back, and you remain stable in this position for at least 20 seconds. Try and go ahead with 25-30 like that, and then over on the other side. So guys, these were the basic activations that we just did. I would want everyone to at least do these basic exercises, some shoulder, hip, core, and stability exercise back at home. And at the same time, your warm-up, your cool-down is of utmost important when considering that you are an athlete. Sood sir and Nandi, can we have some light on the warm-up and cool-down exercises?
Okay, back to us here.
Thank you.
Right.
So basically, when you talk about warm-up, there's psychophysiological preparation before an activity or a competition. So already when you're going for a competition, you must have done all the routine to mentally prepare. But you need to prepare your body. So we can keep this warm-up into two segments: a general preparation as well as specific preparation. Or if we go in more detail, we can classify it as a tissue preparation first, followed by activation of your muscles, and next one is the dynamic work. Actually, the dynamic work is the actual work you're going to do. So that you are simulating the movements which are very much similar to the game you are going to play. In our case, it's golf. Okay. So we can start with basically movements from the lower body all the way onto the upper body, and starting with simple movements to complex movements. So I request Mrinalini to be on the floor and start with an ankle mobility work. The purpose of this drill is to get optimum length on the ankle joint and getting a good length on the calf muscle. Okay, basically you're giving a good stretch on your soleus muscle as well as your gastrocnemius, and which plays an important role because that's the first muscles which is in contact with the ground, or the first joint in contact with the ground. Then comes, you get out active leg raises, which help you to get or activate or get a good range on your hamstring muscles, which plays an important role in your force production, which is greatly involved in your golf swing. So activate them, lay down on your back, and keep your spine neutral. Raise the legs up with good control. Don't swing the legs. Don't make the momentum take over it. Always you should have control over it. Then from here we can move on to the hip region, which needs to be done more elaborately because there is a lot of complex movement, a lot of movements involved in it. So we'll start with internal rotation of the hip joint. You can sit down and do it normally. So internal as well as external rotation of the hip joint. So golf, again, it involves a lot of movements more on the frontal plane, more on the side. So you need a good internal and external rotation range to perform your movement more efficiently. Then from here, you can move on to, you can get up and move on to flexion and extension. So you can take support of your golf club and perform this one. And again, activate the core. Make sure that you are not flexing your spine. A lot of people tend to flex their spine and get it. It's actually activate it, work on the range which is possible. Okay? Don't lose the form. Then from here, we can move on to a bit of rotation on the hip as well as in a single leg pattern. So we go for a lunge and twist. Yeah. So get into a lunge position and make the movement from the thoracic, more of a thoracic spine rotation. Okay. Then from here, you can move on to a quadruple position and do the thoracic rotation again. Getting more, because golf involves a lot of thoracic rotation, so we just want to make sure that we are getting enough thoracic rotation movement, or even enough movement, enough activation on the thoracic spine. Yeah, the important thing over here is, again, do not change the neutral spine. I mean, what I mean by neutral spine is don't arch the spine so much or do not bend it so much. So it should be in a neutral position. And your core has to be activated throughout the movement. And from here, we can go on to the upper extremities. That is, you need to get a good stretch on your lat muscles. With the help of your golf, you can do a good side bend. Again, make sure that you are extending more from the lat muscles. So you're stretching more from the lat muscles. A lot of people tend to work on the neck rather than that one. Okay, you should make sure that you're stretching you or reaching from the lat muscles. Okay. Then you can go for a shoulder work along again with the club. You can get into overhead position. From there, you can dislocate your shoulders, as there's an internal and external rotation happening. Okay, and from there you can go for a javelin throwers drill. That also is a shoulder series to warm up your shoulders. So all these warm up exercises, they are dynamic exercises. Okay, they are dynamic drills. So which you can do on a golf course without any equipment. Okay, but when you're working in a gym, we have got a lot of equipments. You can change the warm up if you want, with the help of a lot of other equipment or a lot of props. And then along with the warm up, we always give a lot of emphasis on cool down. Okay, but there is a lot of contradictory things about cool down. How important is cool down? Cool down is important. Okay, and how much you have to do it? Whether you need to stretch your muscle, whether it's going to give you a lot of benefits, it is still it's a vague area, because when you must stretch your muscles post training, whether it's going to help you to get a lot of length back in, that is not, research has not proven it, because again, muscle will get back in its original shape. And when you are so tight, if you stretch so much, whether you're going to stretch, you're overstretch and make more microtrauma in the muscles and going to damage the muscle. So you always have to make sure that okay, you are doing a stretches. Some people are very comfortable doing a stretches, that's fine, and some people are not comfortable. Okay, they can do some activities, so they can put a physio and take the help of the physio to get a good mobilization. And the most important things post work is always good nutrition. A lot of hydration and all the nutrients you have lost during the game, okay, replenish them. So that helps you to recover much faster. But here I can give you a simple cool down exercises or stretching exercises post workout. And before that, I just want to mention, okay, whatever exercises we did on the dynamic stretches, you can do 2 sets or 1 set of.
Sorry to interrupt you.
10 to 12 repetition. Okay.
I'm just interrupting you for a bit. I think the voice got cracked for the last few words. If you can just repeat, it will be great.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
So when you do warm up, all these dynamic movements, you can do 10 to 12 repetition or 1 or 2 sets. Okay. Now we move on to cool down. So the same way, whatever you do, warm up more of dynamic stretches. In cool down, it is just opposite. You're doing more static stretches, and the stretches can be held for about 15 to 20 seconds. So we can do first a calf stretch. The same position you can get in, and earlier it was more dynamic. Now we are holding it in that particular position for 15 to 20 seconds so that your muscle get a good stretch. And from there, you can move on to your hamstring stretch, lie down on your back. Raise the legs up. So it's more like an active leg raises, but you are supporting it and holding in that position. And this again another 15 to 20 seconds. Then from there, you can go on to a glute stretch. So you can bend your knee and lock it and pull your knee close to your chest. Again, 15 to 20 seconds hold. And from there, you can move on stretching your quadriceps. You can get into a lunge position. And push through the hip. Okay, keep the neutral spine. Then you can go on to adductor stretch. So you're getting into a frog position, and from there on all fours. Okay, and can you face that side? Okay, okay, yeah, very much better. Thank you. Again, keep neutral spine. Push your glute backward, close to your heel, and help you to get a good adductor stretch. Then you can go for a lat stretch as well as a pec stretch with the help of a wall. You can get close to a wall. Yes, now can you do a lat stretch? Sorry. Can you do a back stretch? So all these exercises you can do for 15 to 20 seconds, maybe one set or two sets. Okay. So this is a warm-up and cool-down routine. Now over to Pankuri. If you want to add on something, please.
Thank you, sir. Can we pin the video, please? Thank you so much. That was a wonderful explanation of warm-up and cool-down. Only one thing that I would want to emphasize a little bit is how we just did prehab activations, right? Now, precursor to this prehab activations, I would want everyone who is taking up this prehab seriously to do a good amount of foam rolling before you all start with prehab, followed by the stretches. So foam rolling has to always follow, foam rolling is always supposed to be followed by the stretches in order to be really effectively break those knots or whatever that is in your fascia, wherever you feel tight. Fascia is something that is attached to your muscles and is continuous in your body. That is why at times when you feel pain in certain area, you might feel pain in some other area and you might not get how it is connected. That is connected to your fascia. Another thing that I want to summarize is that not every pain is an injury. Like I said about the calf fatigue before, that was a fatigue pain, right? That pain is not an injury. That pain can be rectified by your own self, taking care of all these considerations that we just discussed. So that's to summarize that. Tarun sir, would you like to add something else to this?
Thanks, Pankuri. We are going to have some questions on foam rolling, I'm sure. So, I was wondering, Pankuri, if you and Achal could just show some basic foam rolling techniques for the lower body, maybe the lower extremities at least. Do you have a foam roller with you? Can you just show people how to use a foam roller?
Sure. Now, this is the foam roller that we have over here. Apart from other foam rollers that we have, this has a really good wedges on this. So this is a little harder on the body. She's going to perform foam rolling. First, we'll do the lower back. Is that fine? Lower back foam rolling. Because we are going to cover the lower body foam rolling. We'll start from the lower back. Yeah. Hope it's visible. Yes. Right? You have to just stick to the lower back, please. Bend your leg so that you have a good weight of yourself on the foam roller. Just lift your pelvis slightly and roll only across the lower to mid back areas over here. Great. This foam rolling can be done for about 10 seconds on each area. 10 to 20 seconds is good. Let's go for glute muscle, that is your buttocks. Now to foam roll the glutes, it's very important to bend one leg in a folded position as we saw the glute stretch, so that it really stretches all the fibers that are also going across in the glute muscle. Now, second step will be to slightly turn yourself on the leg that is to be foam rolled. So slightly turn yourself on towards me, please. Very good. That's a very, very slight turn so that you really open up the hip and roll on the area with your weight on the hands. It's a really small movement, back and forth. Again, 10 to 20 seconds is good enough. You can go till 30 seconds, no problem if you feel really the work is really needed in that area. Hamstrings. These are all muscles behind on the hind side of your body that we are foam rolling right now. Similar thing, weight on the hands. Please keep one leg bent on the, so that way your body is muted. Slightly lift up your pelvis and roll on the hamstring muscle. Now, if you really feel tight, you can also divide your leg in two parts, your thigh in two parts, and roll the first half and then the second half. Sorry, yes. So roll the first half and then the second half. That's for your hamstring muscle. Hamstring is the muscle behind the thigh, the muscle that is behind your knee, extending up to your hip. Then go for the calf muscle. Really, sometimes a really painful area to foam roll. You will keep again the same position. Just slightly lift the head, and that's how you roll on the calf muscle. Now, these are all the muscles that were on the hind side of your body. Let's see how we can foam roll on the front of the thigh, that is your quadriceps and hip flexor. That's your quadriceps foam rolling. You can either do both the legs together, or you can bend one leg, keep it on the side just to maintain your balance. Keep balancing on the elbows and roll back and forth on the hip flexor and the quadricep. All right, that was your foam rolling for the front and back. Can we also just cover up IT band as well, please? Now, this is a little tricky one because you really have to fold one leg, keep it in front, keep it in front of the other knee, the side that you are foam rolling, yes, and slightly go back and forth on the foam roller across the band that is on the outside of your leg, outside of your thigh. This can be painful for some people, but really go according to your tolerable limit. That's perfect. Thank you, Achal. Was that okay, Taran? Anything else that we can demonstrate or help you out?
Yeah, nothing. Just looking at foam rollers, there are different kinds, right? You can see this one has more ridges on it. This is, I would say, a more advanced foam roller, and it's a little harder. You can have even a basic foam roller, which is just purely foam that you can buy online. All these are available online, of course. So I think if you're just starting off with foam rolling, definitely start with the softer one, and then gradually, you can graduate to the more advanced ones. These are harder and obviously more painful. Foam rolling in general, you will see, is a little painful because getting the knots out, the knots in your muscles out is going to be painful. But it's a great way to start any workout. You foam roll, you stretch, and then you go into. So even when you if you're a very serious athlete and you want to go out and play golf and you're going for a heavy practice session, I think it would be great to start with some foam rolling and stretching first, and then go out, do your warm-up activations, whatever your physical training team has told you, and then start your session. Just generally helps you, be more supple when you practice, improves your range of motion to a certain extent, so that you can go out there, and be playing at optimum from the first shot that you hit. I think that's pretty much it for our presentation. I think the team will be now ready to take some questions if there are any. Sia, do you want to take us to some questions?
Yeah, all right, sir. There are a few questions. I shall go to them one by one. Shall the talk not be compromised?
Okay. Now I think I know where that question is coming from. That was from the movement I was talking about, where you have to basically, you've been told to swing upper against lower and resist from the lower body. I don't think the talk is compromised one bit. Now the funny thing is, if you look at Tiger Woods before his injury and after his injury, right, where after his injury Tiger is allowing his right knee to actually straighten out a little bit and pelvis to extend. He's actually hitting it further than he was, right? So no, the talk is not going to get compromised. What we're looking at, guys, is we want an action that gives you longevity. Now, I'm sure you can get 25 yards extra on a shot where you really resist, but you'll play for 25 years less than you could play. So you've got to make a choice, right? It is always distance within reason, right? You have all these ads on YouTube and TV saying, you know what, do this move, God Digest, do this move, and you're doing 25 yards longer. Two things I'm not talking about. One is the effect on your body, and two is the ball even going straight. Because I know a lot of players, Trevor Immelman is one guy who says very clearly after he won the Masters, he decided to try to do longer and he doesn't play golf anymore. So you have to be a little smart in terms of understanding what your body can do within reason and then actually go and search for more distance.
All right, sir. The next question: how to ascertain adequate level of flexibility, mobility, and strength?
So I'll talk about the strength, okay? Then I'll ask my physio team to look into the flexibility area. So how we can develop strength? So it all depends upon like at what level currently you are and what age, what training history you have got. So when any athlete walk into us or any individual walk into us, the first thing is that we do is movement screening as a strength and conditioning coach. Before that, one of the physios do musculoskeletal screening to understand the competency level of the athlete. Okay, so once you are a beginner, we will teach you the fundamental movements. So the fundamental movements we can say are the squats, deadlifts, lunges, step-ups, okay, and vertical rows, horizontal rows, vertical push, horizontal push, vertical pull, horizontal pulls, okay, and we'll work on your core to get a core integrity also. So we may start with is control and stability. We'll try to help you to get more control over your body because you may not have the neuromuscular control and teach you the neuromuscular control pattern, sorry, the movement pattern and help you to get a neuromuscular control over you and improve your stability. Once you have developed adequate control and stability, then we'll try to help you out to get a little bit of hypertrophy so that you develop some muscle mass which will help you to gain more strength. So it is all a process through which, because we first want to understand where you stand and accordingly we move ahead. So we can initially start with a lot of body weight exercises and from there we may move into resistant exercises. Now, regarding flexibility, I want Pankuri and Achal to add on a couple of things.
Thank you, Sudh sir. So as sir mentioned about the screening before we prescribe any of the exercises, right? So we also do the musculoskeletal screening. So where we do some tests to measure your flexibility and mobility of the muscles and the joint, right? So according to that, the exercises are prescribed. So if anyone is hyper mobile or hyper flexible, right? So we can't give much of a flexibility or mobility exercises to them. We will mainly focus for the strength, for the stability of the joint. And according to the nature of a game, right? So whatever, how much ever the flexibility is needed for the proper execution of the movement, those till that level we can do the exercises. We don't have to overstretch the muscle so that it will lead to an injury. So yeah, I guess this was of some help to you. Over to Tarun sir.
All right. Moving on to the next question, sir. How to avoid cramps during playing golf?
Pankuri, can you take that, please?
Yes, sure. How to avoid cramps during playing golf? Exactly the scenario that I mentioned earlier is somewhat related to this question. Thanks for asking that. That's a really good question, by the way. What you can do is how we really always, all of the healthcare professionals, your support staff, your coaches, your SNC team, everyone all emphasizes a lot, your nutritionists, on hydration and replenishing your electrolytes is because they don't want you to get these cramps. These cramps are the reason your body is dehydrated to the tissue level, not just to your systemic, but to the tissue level. Your body is so dehydrated that it results in muscle cramping. It wants you to not perform the movement anymore because it is dehydrated, because it doesn't have enough nutrition to it. And how can you ensure to not let this situation happen is hydrate yourself more and more, have more electrolytes, have more foods that retain water in your body. It's not only important to just keep on sipping water and water. It's also important to have your electrolytes balance maintained so that it's not just having water and going and peeing. No, you have to have have certain superfoods, you can say, the chia seeds and stuff, which you can put in your water. It really retains water in your body. Other things are your electrolytes, your salt and sugar solution, rest, all these things, right? I'm going to talk a little bit about the pre-shot routine or routine that golfers follow during their game. And if you try to incorporate this, having water in your routine somewhere, I think Tarun can better explain this scenario. Since being a coach, he can actually focus on this part. But having this part of sipping some water or electrolyte or having a banana in between your walks or next shot or something will really help you avoid these cramps. Tarun sir, can you just explain the routine, please?
Yeah, I think it's very important. You see, hydration often is misunderstood because a lot of you guys aren't really working with experts. And there was a great talk today by one of the experts called Ryan Fernando. He's definitely one of the best in the country. And I've learned so much from him. But hydration is not only about the day of the competition. Hydration is about your entire week. How was your previous week in hydration? And that can cause cramps on the day of the tournament. So what you have to do is you've got to start loading up on your water intake right from maybe a week before if you really want to do well in the competition. So sometimes you can even load before the round starts. Have a liter of water when you wake up. Have a liter of water before the round. So hydration is not just sipping your water electrolytes on the day of the event, right? So I often talk to my golfers and talk to them about, after every shot you hit, sip some water, sip some electrolyte, make that part of your pre-shot or your post-shot routine if you can. But remember, if you get cramps, it's not only about that particular day. It's how your routine has been for the last 1 week, how much water you've drunk in the last 1 week. And that is why, if you really want to be an elite player, you should start measuring your water intake every day, and you'll be quite surprised. You'll find that you're always not drinking the adequate amount that you should be.
All right, next question, sir. What effect can there be on our lower back if we play with golf clubs which are light for us?
If you're playing with golf clubs that are light for you, I don't think there'll be an issue. I think you swing it really fast, you'll generate speed very easily. The only issue might be in terms of control, because if the club is too light, the coordination and the sync between your body, the club, the arms, and the club head may not be perfect. But I would say personally, and I would ask you to talk about this as well, is I think lighter clubs are better than heavier clubs, especially with our junior golfers. We have a lot of juniors playing full-size clubs, right? Because they want to play Callaway, or they want to play TaylorMade, or they want to play a brand name. They buy full-size clubs, right? And that is where your pattern or the chronic injuries begin. So I would say lighter clubs are better than heavier clubs. So until you're really strong enough, I would say you should play with lighter clubs. No adverse effect apart from a little bit of control, but I don't think there's a major adverse effect. Do you agree with that, sir?
Yeah, because when you've got a heavier club, okay, the force you generate need to be much higher, but your body is not there. So because of that one, okay, what happens is you do a lot of compensatory movements, and your muscular growth is not that good enough to take control over the club. So you can end up with a lot of back injuries, as well as injuries on the wrist, on the shoulders. So it's always better to have a lighter club, so you can have the right pattern of movement, then you can progress.
Yeah. Moving on to the next question. Sir, it is said that Tiger snaps his left leg straight on the downswing when he needs a few extra yards. Is this injurious to our health, as this is a very spur of the moment movement? Yeah.
Well, I think you know what happened to Tiger's knee, right? You know that Tiger's knee didn't last, and he had to have multiple knee surgeries as well, right? And again, you're coming back to all of these moves that people are talking about creating extra distance. See, if you're a junior golfer, you're going to hit your growth spurt at some point. If you eat good food and you have good nutrition, your muscles will also develop well, and the distance will be automatic, provided you have good technique. What I want to do is stop this obsession on distance, right? Because you will hit it far if you have good technique today and you have good nutrition. If you don't have good nutrition when you're a youngster and you're eating all kinds of junk food, you don't have that kind of vitamins, minerals going into your body, right amount of protein. Again, this is where a nutritional expert comes in. This is where you're going to have an issue. So the idea of snapping your knee to create more distance, that was a habit that Tiger had, right? He doesn't do it as much now because now his body can't take it anymore. If you ask me, this whole concept of ground force reaction is not fully understood by a lot of players. So they tend to overdo it and then cause themselves injury. Swing actually, don't try and copy anybody else, guys, because Tiger's body structure is completely different from what yours or mine is. So you can't swing the way he did and can't do the things he did. You can't probably hit the shots that he did as well. And you've got to stay away from that. You've got to be very individual in your own game, and you will hit the ball as far as you're capable of. Right? Sure, you can help with good physical training and nutrition, and that is why for all you youngsters out there, start this habit early. Good nutrition first, I would say. If you don't eat well, forget about training in the gym. It's of no use, right? So eat well first. Stop eating the junk food, stop the sugar. But I shouldn't be telling you this. You guys should be working with a sports nutrition expert.
The next question, should we stretch after the round? Is it advisable?
Yeah, see, what I would say is you may feel a bit of tightness after a round. So there is no harm in getting a bit of stretch and feel yourself good, okay? It's always a feel-good factor, okay? But how much positive effect it may have, it is always like a point of discussion, okay? So if you feel good about after a round, a good stretch, that's absolutely fine. But if you are like, just something not mandatory, okay? But more than all the stretch, it's always important to have a good hydration and eating some nutritious food. That is going to help you out much better.
All right. Next question, sir. What will be the result if we get a sudden jerk while swinging too hard?
If you get a sudden jerk and you have a bit of a pain, now a couple of technical elements. One is the technical element, right? Why are you getting a sudden jerk when you hit it too hard? There is definitely a technical element here, unless the ball was in a really bad or deep rough. But if it happens on a regular basis, you have to definitely check your technique. My guess is that you will be very, very vertical in your swing. But if you do have a niggle somewhere that start feeling it on the course, Bankuri, can you talk about something a player can do if they start to feel a bit of a niggle on the course? Is there something they can do while they're playing?
I'm supposing this is the jerk to the wrist upper body, right, Tarun?
It could be a jerk to any part. It could be a jerk to the hips or the lower back. But if they start feeling something on the course, what would be your advised course of action?
What I would suggest is first identify what you are feeling at the moment. And when you say jerk, was it followed by a painful click or a sound or anything like that? That's really important. If that is the scenario, immediately you would want to ice the area, because when any of these sounds come, apart from the normal popping sounds that your joints make, something that you really need to be taken care of. Apart from that, if you can go ahead with your game, I would suggest whenever you feel a pain during the game, even after that, just take a break, ice the region. If you want, strap it, bandage it, do whatever you can, wrap the area, and either see a physiotherapist who might be with you over there, or your personal physiotherapist later on. But anything painful, identify and don't push yourself through it if it is of that intensity. That is what I would say. And apart from this, again, any injury occurs during the game, any injury for that matter, not just this, your hydration again plays a major role, even with your muscular injuries or your muscular pains. So make sure that these things are in check always.
All right. The next question. Does flat foot or high arched foot alters your game, and also are you prone to injuries because of that?
Flat foot and high arch, because like I said, you want sometimes the ankle to provide some stability as well. But if your flat feet, if your feet are flat, they might move in a different way. But flat feet and high arch, I would say definitely should be looked at. That is a different science in itself. But Pankuri, I think you and Achal can answer this question.
Okay.
So talking about the flat feet and the supinated or the high arch feet. So what happens is a biomechanical chain or a kinetic chain which transfers forces, right? So there is a ground reaction force we talk about. So if there is a flat foot, the distribution is all over uneven, and that's not transferring up the forces properly. And because of that structure of the foot, your knee, hip, and the whole kinetic chain gets disturbed. Even with the high arch foot, happens the same. So you are tend to put more weight on the outer side, and which makes inner muscles more tighter and outer muscles to work more to compensate that. So yes, if your foot is flat or in a high arch, you are more prone to injury and overuse injuries for your knee, hip, and back. So yeah,
I'll just add a little bit to this. If someone tells you that you have a flat foot, a high arch foot, this one thing is that don't keep this in your mind as it is chronic or a death sentence for you. Don't mind, because the more you keep things and function, prone to injuries again. Right? The more you think about making faults somewhere, the more you are prone to make those faults, right? Keep prejudice ever, and visit your physiotherapist or your SMC coach who can guide you better in these areas if required. Use an insole, not train your muscles enough to not let you get these injuries. Glute muscle is a really important muscle that plays a major role in your foot injuries. So make sure you are really training that well. I hope that answers. Yeah.
All right. I think the next question is for you, Ondi. What should be the length of the resistance band, and also how to decide which level of band should you use before your game?
All right. See, if you are a beginner at using the bands, you might want to start with the lightest band around that is there. The length of the band, usually when you buy the bands, it's standard, the band that you get. And apart from that, there are some bands that are the resistance loop bands. Those are the smaller ones. You get a 7-inch and a 10-inch one. Right, and when it comes to deciding which band you require, really depends on if you are a beginner at using TheraBands, you are an intermediate person, or you are an advanced person. Right? If you are a beginner, go for a lighter one. If you are really conditioned with the exercise and the bands, go for medium ones. And each company has got their own colors and their own color coding. So really find out what you are going for, and accordingly ask your physiotherapist and your SMC coach which one is appropriate for you.
All right. Moving on to the next question. Sometimes when I have bad contact with the ball, I get a jolt in my hands, kind of like a shock. How do you recover from this on the course?
Sir, do you want to start?
Yeah, again, when you have a bad contact, again, you could be coming very steep to the ball, does give you a bit of a jolt. I think for a large part, you've got to listen to your body. If it's a pain, a sharp pain, a pain that's not going away, I don't think you should even continue the round of golf, because that little, I would say, that impact can lead to a long-term injury. So I would say definitely, if it's listen to yourself, listen to your body. If it's really hurting too much and continues hurting for the next 4 or so, you should actually walk off the golf course and see a medical professional at the earliest. Pankuri, over to you. What do you think?
Tarun sir, are there any technical errors that can cause these things more often if someone is experiencing it?
It could be, but it also could be, there was a certain tuft of grass that was kind of there with heavy roots, and a player can just get injured like that as well. So not always technical. It can also be just bad luck. If you hit a bad spot on the golf course, sometimes this happens.
All right. Just to add a little bit to this, you are just feeling this jolt, right? This jolt is not accompanied with anything after your game, or the next 24 hours of your life. Just try and keep mobilizing the wrist after you feel this jolt. Let it recover. mobilize it in all the directions that you want to, your radial deviation, ulnar deviation, for your ulnar deviation, your radial deviation, your wrist extension, your flexion, elbow movements, or just try and take some practice shots before you actually hit the shot. That's what I would add to this. And apart from that, if it is really painful, I suggest all the athletes that we have over here to carry ice spray with them, which is really useful in such scenarios when you don't have any access to any other medical aids. So yeah.
All right. The next question is an interesting one. Nowadays, a lot of work is being done on sports analytics and data science to create a predictive model for injury management. How relevant this concept is in golf, and is there any work going on in India on this aspect?
You want to share your sheets?
So, okay, I just want to talk about like how we do this. How do we do the workload management in our system? So a lot of injury prediction is done on the basis of the workload. Okay, so no injury happens over a period, just on the spot. Okay, it's always the cumulative effect of a workload over a period of time. So we call it acute to chronic workload ratio. Okay, so basically we keep the workload again into internal and external workload. So internal workload is how you feel about a load. So after a training, basically that is all about RPE, rate of perceived exertion, and the external workload is the amount of weight you lifted, the amount of distance you covered, and various other aspects you have done on the course, or the number of hours you played. Okay, so we can find out the external workload and internal workload in numbers. Okay, so injury prediction is always if 3 subsequent weeks average workload is more than 1.5 times as well as less than 0.8 times of the current week's workload. The subsequent week, there is always possible that the athlete can get a soft tissue injuries. And with the help of now, we can say new training gadgets, like we use a GPS. With that one, we can find out what exactly, how much distance this athlete has covered, what is the acceleration he has got. And with the help of push bands, you can see what is the velocity at which he's swinging the club. Okay, so we got technology, okay? And we got, if you got a proper sports science team, they'll be able to understand this data and they'll be able to enter this data. Over here, in our academy, we do prediction, workload management, as well as prediction of injury. So if any...
Sia, can we share the screen?
Yeah, sure, sir.
I think you removed the screen share for us. Okay, I'll just to take what suits saying.
So you can share now. You can share now.
You can share now. Yeah.
This is our is developed. So this is a training diary. This is where all our players are actually entering the data, and you can see this last one.
You can see on the last side, okay. So we have got a small area where we do have the injuries, and we are seeing, okay, I work with different other teams also. We are doing it for past 10 years with other sports also. So in India, I don't know, in our academy, we are doing it, and we can always, so depending upon the spike in workload, we always control the workload and make sure that the athlete is not in a hot spot. Okay, so it is done with the help of a team of people working together and entering the data constantly. Risk of injuries.
All right. Moving on to the next question. So, are there any parameters to check if the body is warmed up or cooled down?
All right. So it's all about when you do warm up. Okay, what happens is there is a lot of blood flow onto your skin. Okay. So you can say, you can feel your body, you start sweating a bit, that means your body is warm enough. And when you cool down, post-activity, if there is no further perspiration, Okay, if your perspiration level is dropped down and you are not perspiring anymore, okay, we can say pretty much cool down. Okay, and another one we can see is most important thing is that your heart rate. Whether your heart rate is elevated enough during warm up, you need to get at least 60 to 80% of your MHR during the warm up. So because when you play a sports, okay, normally your MHR, sorry, your heart rate reaches into about 70 to 80% of the actual maximum heart rate. So when you cool down, make sure that your pulse is drop, and it is which is very much close to your resting heart rate. So more than your temperature is a better check your pulse rate. That's a much better indicator.
All right, the next question. How to increase the range of motion in the trunk area?
Okay. Can you get it?
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, can you address this?
Yes, please.
Okay, so we'll demonstrate some exercises for increasing your trunk rotation extension.
All right, I'll just adjust the screen for you all.
Yeah. Okay. So for trunk rotation, be in a sideline position. Okay. You can use foam roller or anything. Okay. Rotation exercise, you can just use a same foam roller that you used for your foam rolling. Keep one leg on that in a 90-degree position from the hip, right? Sorry. And try and open the hands over to the other side, like we have seen in thoracic rotation. That's a good exercise to improve your rotation. Perfect. Try and secondly, trunk region flexibility and range of motion is something that is very much related to your glute flexibility, your hamstring flexibility, and also your neural flexibility. So I would want to just ask you to demonstrate one more exercise, that is supine nerve sliders that we do to improve hamstring flexibility, which will in turn also improve your trunk forward bending as well. So you bend the leg, hold on your thigh at 90-degree position, try and lift the leg up, take the ankle towards you, take it away and bring it down again. That's a really good neural stretch for the nerve that is coming from your low back and going all the way in your foot. That's how, at times you must have noticed that it's not, doing static stretches is not really very effective for you. Add these dynamic stretches and you will see that there's an improvement in the range. I think that answers your question. Apart from that, please make sure that you're foam rolling properly, doing all the stretches with correct technique, all your mobilization exercises. Sometimes yoga helps a lot in improving trunk flexibility and range of motion. So you might want to consider that as well.
All right, the next question. What is the extent of injuries attributed to improper golf shoes?
Pankuri, can you take this?
Yes. Okay, I don't have a correct number for you, which is the extent of injuries attributed to the correct golf shoes. But when it comes to any sport, it's always advisable to wear a correct footwear that is meant for the sport. There's a purpose for that, so that you are able to carry on with all the sporting activities related to that sport smoothly. Secondly, if you are facing any issues with your foot, make sure you have those customized insoles or customized shoe made for yourself and try and use that. Don't let the shoe be worn and torn from the inside. You can see if there's a wear and tear inside the shoe is going to change your weight bearing over there, in turn leading to some injury or some pains and aches in your body. So that's what I think. I hope that answers. If not, please let me know. I'll elaborate more.
All right, the next question. Should foam rolling be used before or after stretching, and why?
Foam rolling should be done always before stretching so that it really, how we discussed, there's a long fascia continuous from our head to our toes all through the body, right? Foam rolling helps that fascia not get really tight. We know that our muscles are tight and you cannot really foam roll the muscles too much. You cannot go that deep in every muscle. So what you're working on is that cellophane kind of structure that is covering all the muscles. You're working on that. So make sure you foam roll first and then stretch the muscles for better effect of the foam roll and better warm up for any routine that you're doing after that, be it activations, be it strength, or be it your sport.
All right. So is it advisable to do this rolling every time we play a tournament?
It's advisable to do that every time you play a tournament because that's how I just said, right? It is preparing your body to face the tournament. What will happen if you don't do it is you are going to feel a lot of tightness wherever your tight structures are, which might have come through in your screening as well, the tight muscles, and you might end up on your physio stable, for some mobilization or for massage or something. So to avoid these scenarios, make sure you have foam rolled it well. And even after that, if you feel that you are having some aches and pains that is not going from after your efforts, go ahead and see your physio for that.
All right. Is it advisable to do foam rolling with the football as during this quarantine they cannot get a foam roller?
Yeah, so it's a good alternative we can do, but see what happens, not much of a pressure. So what we are doing in foam rolling is releasing the myofascia as she talked or Sutra talked about, right? So not that effective, but yes, if it can be an alternative if you have no access to anything, or else you can use as told by our Sutra, you can use a rigid pipe or POC pipe, whatever is available. So you can do with that also. Another alternative that I would like to add in this is try and get access to a cricket ball or a couple of those. That will be really great. Just you all rolling. There are a lot of videos on YouTube which tell you how to exactly do the ball rolling, which we have not covered today over here. And if you can make a net ball from two tennis balls, that is an alternative. You can just do tennis balls in a new sock or something, tie it so that you can really use it on the spine, on the muscle that is covering or the side of the spine, right? These are really helpful for those regions or your glutes or your larger muscles. So that's a good alternative for that.
All right. The next question. If in between a tournament, a player faces a small injury and is unstable to get a special attention, what would you suggest?
Is unstable to get special
Unable,
attention.
unable to get special attention. Unable.
Okay, now that really depends on how grave the injury is, what is the extent of the injury. If the athlete is not able to stand, balance, or walk ahead and really trying to push himself, the pain is on a scale of 10, like more than 5, 6, 7, 8. I would suggest he take a break from the game, bring himself out of it, strap the area, and see a physiotherapist or an orthopedic surgeon, whoever he can access to at that moment. And if something is manageable at his extent and he knows how to manage those injuries, I think he should go ahead and contact his physiotherapist and ask what can be done. I would suggest a lot of athletes out there to carry your own first aid kit for such scenarios, carry an ice spray into it, carry a set of kinesio tapes, learn how to do self-taping for conditions that you have faced before, which might recur or you might have to do it at the moment. Just make your own special first aid kit and carry that. That's my advice for this.
All right. The next question. After a round, my calf are quite stiff. I do massages also. What more should I do to relieve that?
All right.
So as we discussed about a whole lot about the nutrition and hydration, so keep that factor in mind to follow that, right? Second, after long walking, what happens? Your muscle are tend to get stiff. So as we discussed, in between you can do some stretches, some dynamic stretches to get back again to the game. And as massages, there can be some niggles which are bothering you over a period of time again and again. So yes, see the physio, he'll give you the solution, he'll treat you accordingly and give you some exercises to be on the game throughout.
All right. Moving on to the next question. Keeping in view the injury and longevity aspects, what would be a desirable schedule for fitness and golf during a week for a teenage golfer?
Can you repeat the question once again?
Can you repeat the question, Sia?
Yeah, repeating the question. Keeping in view the injury and longevity aspects, what would be a desirable schedule for fitness and golf during a week?
All right. So again, we initially said that it all depending upon the training history of an athlete. If an athlete is just a beginner, he's a teenager, but he doesn't have 1 year of golf history. So we'll be making sure that the athlete is not overtrained. So he'll be trained like a young athlete, like a 9-year-old, 10-year-old athlete, because that is his work capacity. Okay. So normally any young athlete, we make sure that they are not overdoing things. So in fitness, we may have 2 sessions to the most, and rehab sessions, 2 sessions to the most, and golf sessions maybe 4. That's a teenagers. But if he has got a 6 to 8 years of training history and has got a good physical performance training history, his workload may be higher because his tolerance to that level of workload is much higher, and he needs to have a certain amount of good workload. Then only his performance can be enhanced, or then only he can improve his performance. So in that case, we may have 3 strength sessions, or maybe 2 conditioning sessions, or maybe 5 to 6 golf sessions, or maybe overall we can say it will be also quarterly.
Yeah, I think it depends also a lot on where the child is in terms of his school schedules. If he's in 10th standard, he's not spending any time outside the house, not doing golf. If he's, let's say, in the open schooling system, he's got a lot of time, then his day will be structured, his whole day will be structured accordingly, right? So, again, my advice would be to always seek the help of a professional to kind of help you understand where they are in their training lives, how much they can do, and based on that, routine should be made. Very important to keep the routine consistent, right? Don't have spikes in the routine. If there are spikes in the routine, there's going to be injury.
All right. Sir, we don't have any more further questions. So we can
thanks.
Carry on. Yeah.
Thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Hopefully it was educational. I know we did a lot of demonstrations, but I think there is a recorded version going to be available on YouTube, so you can go back to the recorded version to see all those exercises. I think the bottom line is, how motivated are you to take care of your body? Whether you are a club golfer age 55, or whether you're a junior golfer age 10, I think it's really about you and where you want to go and how you want to have your body last for the next 40 years playing this wonderful sport. So thank you all very much. Thank you to my team, Sood, Minalini, Pankuri, Achal. I think you guys did a great job today. Thanks a lot. I think there's one more question coming in, but I don't think we can take that. So thanks guys, and well done team TSG.